Now we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what Indians are all about.
I still say we Indian people are believers in the truth. This is the way of life that was given to your people. You're born an Indian, you're going to die an Indian. Indianness is a good life. You're facing an Indian this afternoon.
Good Saturday afternoon out there, everyone, and welcome to your #1 source for Native American television news, Native News Today. I'm your host, Jason Salzman, here in the Muscogee Media Studios as we get ready for this week's episode. You know, we've been hearing a lot of great feedback from all of our viewers out there, the people that are looking on our new website, MuscogeeMedia.com. We really enjoy the fact that you're getting all of your information, all of your pertinent news right there at that news source, MuscogeeMedia.com. You get video, you get all the latest newspaper articles, all kinds of interaction with us and the stories that we're covering, including our biggest story right now, fractured finances, the reported deficit that we are dealing with at the Muscogee Creek Nation Department of Health. As part of that story, we requested on a few occasions to speak with former Principal Chief during the years in question, 2011 to 2015, George Tiger. He granted that request. We have him in studio today. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with that exclusive interview. You're watching Native News Today. Looking for your next 18-hole adventure? Then take a look at Fountainhead Creek Golf Club. Nestled in the beautiful confines of Lake Eufaula State Park, large sloping greens and well-placed bunkers characterize the Muscogee Creek Nation's Floyd Farley designed course and offers a fine test of skill for any golfer. Stay up on all the latest gear and equipment with a visit to our pro shop. Have lunch at the Turn at the Clubhouse Grill. We're waiting to accommodate you at Fountainhead Creek. Give us a call at 918-689-3209 or visit fountainheadgolf.com to book your next round. Fountainhead Creek Golf Club, close to home, far from ordinary. And welcome back to the program. And as I was saying at the beginning, we now have an exclusive interview for the first time being interviewed on the health deficit story. George Tiger, the Principal Chief of the Muscogee Creek Nation from 2011 to 2015. We, as I said, requested the interview. He granted it, came in with us to talk about what he feels are some misunderstandings or some confusion on the topic. So we clarified that, covered a number of questions, and we have that for you here now. Chief, first of all, thanks for coming in today and being with us here to discuss some of the things that we've been talking about and that you've even given interviews on yourself. But the first thing I would ask you is, in your comments previously that we've seen, you seem to think that, or it seems to be your belief that you disagree that it's a deficit or that the amount or just really the status of it. Can you explain why you think that?
Yeah, I need to do a little correction here. You're actually my first interview, my very first interview on this whole thing. I did do a submission of some statements that was used, and I appreciate Muscogee Media for allowing me this time to be able to react to some of the things. I think to some degree there's been some sensationalism in the theme, if you will, of whatever's going on with health. There hasn't been a deficit. We didn't know of a deficit when we left. There wasn't any deficit in terms of what the process or what we knew in terms of what was going on with health. We did a lot of new innovative ideas that were implemented. And, if there was a deficit, certainly I and the members of the National Council would have known about it way back when. There was a lot of things that we did that was, I think, pioneering in terms of who we are as Muscogee Creek Nation, how we address the health issues that our citizens, when I came in, prior to me coming in, I commissioned a survey to see what their concerns and issues were, and health was #1. So I made a commitment to them, to the citizens that we serve. We were going to improve health, whether it meant allowing for more quality health care to be done or having more resources available to them. That was the emphasis of addressing the health needs that our citizens were wanting to have addressed.
Considering that, you don't believe there is a deficit, do you have documents to show that everything's fine or was fine when you left?
Well, #1 is I think still yet there are some people, employees that are jockeying themselves for positions to make sure they keep their positions, and maybe providing some things that we really needs to be studied. And I wish that the council would do that and not just go on what was presented to them. We feel like that when we left the nation, we left it in good financial stability. It was consistent with the growth that we had during my administration. The stability and the finance part of it is pretty well documented in terms of our growth with the permanent, so-called permanent fund. And there were periods of time prior to me coming on that there were some deficits. We addressed those issues and turned some of those things around. As an example.
How did you guys address it?
Well, we addressed them because, number one, for instance, there was a little bit of corruption that had gone on before. There's stealing from Peter to pay Paul. So immediately we addressed that and said, well, that's not going to happen anymore. There were some issues in terms of how procurement was being done. Those kinds of things that we addressed, and again, we didn't point fingers. We just said, this is about Creek Nation. We addressed them and got them taken care of.
We requested and received audits from fiscal year 2013 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
Out of those audits, I want to read something quoted in them. It said, business type activities reported a decrease in net position of $8.7 million. This decrease is attributable to the Department of Health's operating expenses exceeding its operating revenues by 65.2, the federal grants and contracts offsetting 48.7 million of that. That essentially leaves us with a deficit of 16.5, if you roughly.
Right, instead of 65 million.
Right, yeah. And so, but what are your thoughts there? Because as principal chief or the council, you guys would have to see an audit that you ordered for the nation, right?
Well, it's ordered every year.
You're right.
It's just a natural thing that you do.
But did you not see that 16.5 deficit in there?
Well, the one thing that you have to remember is we basically improved a lot of facets of what was going on in health. So we had to spend money. Certification for our clinics, certification for some of the things that were going on. Some of the things that we presented to the council and they addressed, we all believed that it needed to be done together as a executive and legislative. Any reports that we get, whether it's the administration or the executive branch office, the council gets it too. And if either of us felt at that time that we saw that it was something that was of grave concern, certainly it would have been addressed.
Right. Now, fiscal year 2013 didn't show a deficit or didn't show anything, but then how do we explain, do you think you could pinpoint maybe the reason that there was one that came up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, again, to improve the quality of health care for our citizens, number one, when we came in as administration, we didn't have providers, we didn't have nurses, our salary scales were lower, we couldn't compete, we couldn't keep good health professionals. When we came in, we found out that there were some monies available to be able to provide raises for our nurses and to raise the level for getting good providers to provide the health care that was needed. We did increase some salaries. There were some other things that we had to do to be able to recruit and to, for lack of a better term, entice people, our own citizens, by the way, that wanted to come home. There were some things that we provided to them, relocations, expenses and those things. That's a standard practice in the medical field, in the corporate world. Because the one thing that we said was, we're going to have to operate our tribe as a corporate, because basically that's what we are. We just happen to be a tribal government. But we always fell back on the fact that as a tribal government, we can provide resources as any working, viable government does. Just like the U.S. government, Indian Health Service facilities, Veterans Administration facilities. Do they make money? I can't answer that. Do they have deficits? I can't answer that. But I do know that whenever you're trying to improve the quality of health care for citizens, that you do have to spend some money. And again, that money was spent after I was authorized and it was approved by the National Council.
You said before that the Department of Health was writing off $3 million a month due to lack of effort to recover. How'd you know that, and what was the plan there to fix that?
Well, number one, let me preface saying this before I answer that.
Sure.
I am in contact with former Secretary of Health Seneca Smith. Now, I know that there's been attempts to contact him to make some statements regarding some of these things. Now that he is a federal employee, he can't do that. So I basically asked him, what are some of the things that we feel like we need to address? And that was one of the things that we both agreed that, maybe we need to take a more of an aggressive approach in addressing the shortfalls. When we came in, we were very low on the amount of money that we were able to recoup, for lack of a better term. There was a very aggressive process that, in the way that we addressed it, to where in this fiscal year, we actually, in the last fiscal year, made a commitment to try to get anywhere from $5 to $8 million more coming in a month in healthcare to recoup some of those things.
And Chief, the big question is that we've all, is the council says we didn't know anything about it, and a lot of people, you yourself included, said we didn't know anything about it. You have said that the council was indeed aware. Now, do you still believe that, or I mean?
Well, they have some standing committees. Those standing committees have a responsibility and oversight of the various areas of our tribal government. You have health, education, and welfare that's over the health programs. They're provided information on everything that is done. All programs provide that to the council. I will say this, being a former speaker, one of my pet peeves as a speaker was there were times that a lot of my colleagues didn't read what was in front of them. And I used to jokingly say, I'm going to quit printing things out because you guys don't read them.
You think that's what happened here?
I don't know. I can't answer that,
Right.
Because each session has a little different makeup. But I think that, when I say we should have known about it or didn't know about it, either way, those reports are provided to us. We have quarterly meetings, quarterly session meetings where all those things are reported at that time. So, and again, the other thing too is, the National Council has their own financial person who also gets reports, financials, every month, in-house that they could easily ask for. So, rather than point fingers and blaming or saying we didn't know this or we did know this or whatever, we've overcame a lot of things as Muscogee Creek people, and I know that we'll overcome this as well.
One of the things brought up too in the discussion has been the types of loans and how they play out and everything like that. And a big thing has been balloon payments. That's been a hot topic.
And that's another thing that I'm surprised that people on the council are questioning, because every big project this nation has ever done, whether it's in gaming or other things, there's always been a standard practice of having balloon payments.
Right.
And that's something that is standard. We did that when we first built River Spirit. We've done that with this current project that's going on. I'm surprised that it's surprising some of my former colleagues.
The loan to recoup and kind of get us back that they've brought forth, it doesn't contain a balloon payment, and it's actually a lower interest rate. Can you explain maybe, is that an instance where that's not regular tribal business, or what would be the explanation there? That they wouldn't have
I'm
balloon
not a
payment
financial person, so
Okay.
it'd be hard for me to explain. I do know that it is a standard practice that we've done in the past. If they were able to negotiate something, fine.
Right. What about the Margaritaville loan? I mean, anything you can share with us on the details about that? How you feel about the loan? No.
Well,
its particulars.
All I know is this: that we got probably one of the best gaming industry syndicated loans in the country on that project. And again, it does have a balloon payment on it. Of course, before I could even sign a contract on it, it went before the council and they approved it.
Now you look at everything that you've said as far as dealing with the council on the purchases, a lot of people have said, well, why were we purchasing, expanding while there was a deficit? Talk about the process that goes in with the purchases, the two health facilities and then existing health facilities. What goes into that process for people that don't know how this nation works, and what a principal chief is to do to give all the information to the council when you bring stuff up like this?
Well, number one, on any purchase, I'll start with the purchase of the Muscogee Memorial Hospital. There wasn't a red cent that came out of the coffers of the Muscogee Creek Nation. We assumed their debt. There's all kinds of rumors going on that the medical center in Muscogee was making money before we took it over. If they were making money, we wouldn't have it. They would still have it. The Muscogee Hospital Authority board would still be operating that. We came to the council, but before we did our homework. The senior management of health, those members have a lot of knowledge about health. They went in, did some feasibility studies, came back, and everything was presented to the council. We're not having to pay; we're having to assume. By the way, that assumption of that purchase, it was I think within an 18-month period that particular financial situation was retired. Again, we just didn't arbitrarily, and we didn't on anything that we did, and purchases or whatever, do it without the consent of the National Council. The George and I Rehab Center, formerly George and I Rehab Center, we heard that that there was a possibility the University of Oklahoma was wanting to get out from underneath it because of location in terms of providers that were working there, and there's some other things that they were having a concern with. So we approached President Bourne at University of Oklahoma that we may have an interest. And so, as you know, you were there for the signing of that whole thing, is that one of the statements that President Bourne made was that they weren't going to turn it over to just anybody. They'd done their homework on us too, and that they saw that the advancements and the progress in the health areas that they felt like that they were leaving in good hands. That facility was purchased for $1 million, and that money came from the investment funds that the health division had. So it didn't come out of coffers. So we did also, again, approach the nation or the National Council to get their advice and consent to authorize that to happen, and that's what happened.
Knowing what you did about sometimes that we don't get as much as we need from IHS, there are shortcomings because we don't get the funding that's required. And then you talk about the issues that we had with collecting. Did any of that come into your mind to say, maybe let's pump the brakes on expansion a little bit because we've got these two things, or did you think that those were issues that we could overcome?
No, I think that anytime you're seeking to improve quality of health care, you do whatever you can to move forward progressively and positively. One of the things we looked at was in doing is to increase the number of people that were in collection and in the billing process. We even thought at some point in time, because there's other entities in the health industry that has the same issues that we were having in being able to collect, that we would also look at having a separate entity. Their whole thing was going to be collections and billing for not only us at the Muscogee Creek Nation and our health facilities, but other health entities as well. That meant more jobs for our tribal members to be able to do that. Again, that was one of the goals that we had in mind. We did have record number of years during my administration in collections of those things. We increased it quite enormously on a per month basis.
The council had a planning session where the health board was present to speak to some of these claims. From the audio, it basically the health board was relaying a lack of transparency with management, meaning Seneca. They weren't getting everything they needed from Seneca. Do you believe this was true, or were you aware of this at any time? Did any health board members come to you and say, look, we need to do our jobs, we're not getting everything we need?
Yeah, just a correction. The nation doesn't have a health board. It does have a senior management that the council met with.
Right.
I think that there were a couple of comments in that particular thing where there was even words like bullying tactics and things like that may have been said, but I think that anytime you're going to progress, you have to have good numbers, and that comes from the finance department of the, in this particular case, from the health department. I know that in the past, whenever we needed some information, the late James Pratt would always come to me and said, I'm not getting the information I'm needing as quickly or as expediently as I would like to get it. Again, it could be the system that we have too, but I don't know of, no one's ever came to me at any time to say that there's no transparency in the health administration. I do think that there may have been some miscommunications. Again, sometimes it's how the question is asked. And I think in this particular instance, it was how the question was asked. Yeah. Okay? I think if the question would have been or could have been conveyed is, is there some transparency issues that may be, forthcoming instead of point blank, just again pointing fingers at someone. We don't, as Muscogee people, we've never succeeded in pointing fingers at someone. We've been able to work together and get these things worked out. You see it at the ceremonial grounds. If they have an issue, they call everybody in. Let's get together and sit around in a circle and get it done. They do that at our traditional churches as well. And I think, those are some of the things that we really need to get back to.
You said not a health board. What was that again? A health.
It's like the senior management.
Okay, senior management. Is it always been like that at our health system, or
no?
Did you guys bring that in? Your administration, I mean. Did you bring that in? Okay.
It was
in place.
It was in place.
How are they selected though? I mean, does each chief select them? Did you?
No.
Okay.
That's done in-house.
Okay.
I always felt to some degree that as chief, we have people that we appoint. It's confirmed by the National Council. We should allow them to do their work, and if there's issues concerning that, that's when I intervene. But and looking back, really, and what was going on with health, there's too many positive and successful stories that were going on instead of any negativity. You're going to always hear, I waited 6 hours at the emergency room. Not too long ago, I went to emergency room at St. Francis with one of my grandkids. We sat there 6 hours, and I was kind of smiling, thinking, it's no different than what we do at the Creek Nation. One of the things I'm really proud of in our health is that we on the MRI unit that was built at the medical center in Muscogee, we did that because we were having to resource that out, and we're paying millions of dollars. Now that money can be kept locally and recycled to maybe do some other programs with the money that we're making off of it.
Yeah. A lot of things as principal chief, there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of things to answer to, and there's a lot of information to gather. Do you feel like at any time in your 4 years that you were cheated of some of that because you didn't know, or something slipped through the cracks? I mean, because as principal chief, you're submitting budgets to the council for this nation that have, supposedly, or according to documents, that has had us in the red on some things. So does that make you go back and regret the fact that there wasn't something told to you or anything like that?
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Sure.
In every cabinet meeting I had, one of the things I always started out with is, we're here to work for the citizens that we serve. Any things that you do, you make a decision on it. But in the long run, I'm the one that's going to have to answer for it. So I need to know what's going on. If I was cheated out of some information, you see that every day in everyday life with any leader. Who's to say that the Speaker of our National Council may not have been given some information that he might feel cheated out of? It's a process. This world is not perfect by any means. And that's what I shared with my cabinet. None of us are perfect. This nation is not perfect. But one of our goals is we're going to strive for perfection. And I feel like that's one of the things that I took a lot of pride in. I think because of people being misinformed about some of the projects that you asked me about earlier, automatically people were thinking that we were in the red on everything, and we weren't. In the previous administrations, going all the way back to Claude Cox, who I worked for, there were periods of time when there were things that we operated or we were part of that were in the red. So it's nothing new, and I'm not using that as an excuse. Yeah. Well, my opportunity today to visit with you is to let the people know is we have a new chief. We need to get behind him because it's a learning process for him. It's a learning process for the entire nation. It's a learning process for the people that he's appointing. And instead of pointing fingers at him, I haven't done it. All I'm saying is that there's some issues that I was told that didn't happen, and I'm trying to clarify some of those things by this interview.
Is there anything else, Chief, that you'd like to add before we let you go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're always going to have detractors, the naysayers, and I'm sure that Chief Floyd is probably already hearing that himself. You have to be awful broad-shouldered to be a chief, or even any elected official within the Muscogee Creek Nation. I don't think people really understand when we say we're the fourth largest nation in the country, Indian country. There's a lot of things that go on. We're not going to catch everything, And those that think that we can, they're dreaming. I think that regardless of what we do, even in what you do in the media, we say and we do to represent the people we serve. There's going to be times that a number of people is not going to agree with what you put on TV or what you do. It's just life. It's just life. I mean, but instead of whining about it, and instead of questioning about decisions, you have to go on. You have to go on. The Muscogee Creek people back in November made a decision. I'm okay with it. Actually, I think God does things sometimes to kind of wake you up and take you in another direction. And I see that with my life. My wife is well. She's back at work. The last year and a half has been tough on our household, but we've overcome it. And just as I said earlier, the Muscogee Creek people, they'll rally around one another, and we'll overcome this too.
Thank you, sir, for the time.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of Native News Today. Now, if you want to go back and watch that interview, it is available in its entirety, either on our YouTube channel, our online channel, or you can go to MuscogeeMedia.com. The video section there, I think it was upwards of 800 views last time we checked, and it's just been up for a few days. So a very popular video there. If people want to go back and see it, that's the beauty of our online channel. You can have all of our content on demand as you can get to it. Sometimes we understand you can't be with us here on Saturdays. Every Saturdays, a lot of you DVR, and so we appreciate that too. So we want to just keep everybody up to date on what we got going on, not only on our online channel, but on all of our social media sites, as well as MuscogeeMedia.com, your all news source for all things Muscogee Creek Nation. What's going on with the government, what's going on with the people, what's going on with the events, all of it's right there. So stay with us at Muscogee Media. We'll have you hooked up with all the information you need. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for being with us.